Okay. All right. Thank you, Madam Toastmaster. And I just got back from the dentist this evening, so I may have a very informative speech, or it may be very entertaining. But either way, we're going for it. So there it is with our title, and let's see what else we've got going about. Oh yeah, I was dealing with things like energy, environment, climate, and things, and we're still stuck one more forward. Ta-da! I've got my person volunteered. Was it stuck on us?
Sorry. Here it goes.
I'm frozen.
Here it goes.
There you go. I wrote a couple books on it, and well, that was nice. But it really became personal on January 7th. And let's see about some pictures. I got that. Well, digging through those. Yeah, that sometimes gets hard to twirl. One more page, maybe with a wheel there. There it is. That was on that morning. I heard about fires to the west, about 24 miles in Pacific Palisades. Well, that was that's sad. It's far away, even kind of colorful because we got a super sunset. We also had in late afternoon, hey, we've got a fire in northern Pasadena, Altadena area. That was more like 7 miles to the north of me, a lot closer. And I had another event that I was on a Zoom call with some people all over the country, and a minor function of mine. And when I got done, I called one of my friends in Altadena, and I said, "How are you doing?" He said, in an unbelievably calm voice, "We're evacuating in a few minutes." And I said, "Good luck." That was Jim, who's known to some of the people here. He's been in this club. He's been in the JPL Toastmasters Club. He was a division governor at different times. He's in his retirement club is San Gabriel Valley. So I said, wow, I'm worried about him. Even more, I was worried about me, my family, our house. We were just 7 miles south in East Los Angeles, East LA, which, I thought, dang, Altadena never had any fires for at least 140 years, and suddenly they were burning. Wow. Could they go another 7 miles south through Pasadena? Maybe it could happen. And meanwhile, there's saying another flip of the thing. There was views like that on the news all times, and another flip or two. That was
Jim Rainey's house.
Jim Rainey's house.
It fell down.
Thankfully, yeah, he and his family did fine. They stayed with friends, but you can see that house and the yards 2, 3, 4 further back, which used to be houses and a lot more trees. It's like, this is a serious thing. Although the bad of good for other people, the fire went mostly west instead of pushing down through Pasadena. So most of Pasadena was spared, but people to the west, they suffered. Not necessarily rich people at all. It tends to be a lot of poorer people in Altadena. So anyway, you look on a little further. This is like maybe the new normal. People in the United States haven't heard of Fort Murray in Alberta. They're in the forest. So yeah, big fire got started, had winds, made its own hurricane force winds, but they had freeways. So freeways were packed, 100,000 people evacuated, and most of them lost their houses. Paradise, California in 2018, they were off the freeway, and there was narrow roads getting out of town, and 85 people, mostly from Paradise, were the ones that didn't make it out. You've heard about more exotic place, Lahaina, Hawaii. Brush and cattle country now, because the big plantations have closed for economic reasons. That fire came in, hit Lahaina town, about 102 people dead. Right now, for the January fires in Los Angeles, of which I think there's about 5 or 7, depending how you count, there's 28 dead, maybe another 20 or 30 when they keep looking through the rubble. But we haven't had things like this before. Growing up and say, well, there was another city that had 50,000 people evacuated and 20 or 30 people died. Didn't happen that often at all. So what are we thinking about that? Why could that have happened? Well, the Indians used to burn off. In the wet season, they would burn a lot of forests, they'd make open spaces, they'd burn off the weeds they didn't like and favor berries and nuts and things. So it was actually a form of agriculture of their own. But the European American settlers said, dang, those heathen savages, what do they know? What did they know about it? I mean, they've only been here 5, 10, 15,000 years. They wouldn't know anything. Well, maybe they knew something. The Forest Service, starting in about the 30s, had put out every fire by 10 o'clock the next day. Well, that caused more and more trees to build up and squeezed them in more places. And furthermore, even doing the work before you wanted to clear brush and things so there wouldn't be fires, we kind of lost interest in that. Because we used to do it 10 or 20 years ago, 1961, when there was the Bel Air fire. After that, there were big fire breaks put up on the mountainsides. That hasn't happened for 10 years, 15 years. There's something called Heat Island, where if you have more pavement and houses, especially concrete things, that makes it hot. And we drain everything off very nicely. So in the spring, so you don't have any flooding in those swampy areas that are now housing tracts. But that, because there's no water there, it gets hotter. The heat can pull down more of those seasonal fires. Boom, boom. And hey, if you believe in global warming, that's probably had some effect on it also. Boom, boom, that's a lot. So that leads us to something, the podcaster Joe Rogan, he heard something from a fireman. And the fireman said, one day it's going to be the right wind and the fire is going to start in the right place and it's going to burn through LA all the way to the ocean. And there's not a thing we can do about it. Well, Rogan figured out something he could do about it. He moved to Texas. Doesn't matter. Although Texas has had a few fires, they just don't have as thick a brush. And it's cleared out a little more, but they've had some fires too. Now, I concluded on this, homeowners, maybe we should figure out we're on the road. And renters too can have some effect, although it's harder to get that landlord to do stuff. So what are we gonna do? Yeah, we'll see about what we might do. Yeah, this new normal, as some people have said, wildfires increasingly hitting cities. In the last 10 years, we had 5 of them there. Local fire departments and fire insurers, they eventually run out of other people's money and they cut off the insurance. The government can't get enough money to pay everybody back, and so they skimp on things are fixed. So we got to do it. If you got a house, you've got to do it yourself. And so I start getting to what I call the 3 biggest fixes. There's a number of other things, but this is the most important, starting with people that lived in the forest for forever. I've always said, you've got to have a defensive space with limited vegetation. Then there's also the screens on buildings are frequently not good enough to stop flying embers, because especially when the January wildfires we had, embers, those hot little sparks, It's kind of like they were like a orange pink blizzard with snowflakes that were yellow bright spots flying through past the firefighters. Boom. So the embers, another metaphor is they're the paratroopers to the fire. When I went by the Eaton area of the where the Eaton fire went into Altadena, the first 2 or 3 blocks, none of the houses got burned. But then as it got onto other places, suddenly it heat up. Could it have been they were screened off the embers? But we'll get to that again later. And finally, fire-resistant windows if it's facing big trees. We'll get back to that defensive vegetation. At least 3 feet of gravel or cement around a structure. And then the same for branches and approaching structure. And grass no more than 4 inches high. Progressively more brush allowed with distance. Now I'll give the negative examples. It's a wonderful garden that we live in. So people have trees crowding up all around their house. And I might mention, I'm not so sure what kind of screen they might have behind that vent near the peak of that house. Let's see what else we've got elsewhere. Oh yeah, can't forget, I'm looking for the how much I might have to pay or if I could get it free. There was one red roofed house in Lahaina with rubble all around it at in old Lahaina town next to the ocean. And why was that? Because they put cement 3 feet around and cleared some other things to watch out for termites, but it also protected their house. And now they're finally saying, well, we're back living in our house. We want to tell other people that these are some of the things that make it work. Now let's see what else we've got. I got a few more of these. Oh yes, heat rises. This house, and it's a rich house up in South Pasadena, which is much richer than us East LA people. There's this bush underneath the overhangs. That bush fires up, the heat goes up, it'll burn the overhanging wood. That's where it's doubly dangerous. There's that one, and there's more. There's more. Another pretty house in South Pasadena, they have their flowers under the overhang. So, and there's a little bit more. Oh yeah, there's a commercial building. And a lot of commercial buildings were lost in Altadena for things like this and for things like the vents. Let's go on a little further. Wood fences and wood gates are like thin trees. They burn really well. They're bridges. If that garage to the left side catches, it will carry as a bridge the flame over to the house, or vice versa. It's these things we didn't have to be concerned about, but now this is the new age. If you don't do anything, nobody else apparently will. Okay, on some more.
Pile of leaves over there too.
Yes, but at least that's a ways away from the house. And of course, I give my caveat warning. Some plants are more flammable than others. I don't have any details on that. So some of the broadleaf plants are not as bad, but as a general rule, pine trees, they're green all year round because they've got antifreeze running through the plant. And so it burns really good. Well, we'll need more details. If anybody has them, I'd be appreciated. Go on a little further. Screening against flying embers. Keep those embers outside. If it gets into your attic, your house is toast. And plastic or fiberglass screens will melt, and so then they won't be there. You can go with maybe finer. Used to be at 1/4 inch. Now they're saying a lot of places have changed their code to make it just 1/8. And on a couple more, since I'm getting there, oh yeah, here's somebody that's got a kind of a triple crown there, whole bunch of plants climbing up the the wooden columns on the house going to underneath the overhang, up on the top vents, probably not screens there, and then not visible, there's a fence that runs a whole block.
Oh, wow.
And then plumber, somebody put in a new gas line and some Romex for something electrical. When they did it, they punched through the screen and nobody thought to replace it. That's the entryway for the fire. Okay, and next, I don't have any details on that, but glass, if there's heat from a fire near the glass, it can break the glass, it can melt plastic frames. You want wood, you got heat resistant things. If it's a window facing some big trees, even 10 or 15 feet away, if you're looking out to the street, like the front of my house, I'm looking 50 feet to across the street before I see anything that even looks like a tree. So I wouldn't need it there, but on the side with a nice tree, maybe I should. And fire shutters is a thought that comes to my mind. Now, this one is one of the more expensive ones. So getting along, I think for a reminder for the end of things is defensive space, effective screening, fire-resistant windows. We have any questions? Oh,